I thought I'd do a follow-up of the ficuses that I pruned. Now I'm sitting here at my computer and I pulled up a picture, a screenshot that I took of a video I did back in May, and this picture was in fact taken on the 12th of May, which is only about 6 weeks ago. And 6 weeks ago, if you remember, I did show a video about pruning ficuses, and I pruned them very, very hard. As you can see, these ficuses are almost like skeletons. I pruned every single leaf off, and they were down to the bare branches like this. They didn't have a single branch on. So I'm now going to walk into my conservatory, which is literally just about 20 feet away, and I'm going to show you what has happened in the last 6 weeks. It's a bright sunny day, and 30th of June, for those of you who live in the UK, will remember that we were forecast the hottest day of the year at 34 degrees centigrade. And in the greenhouse, it feels even more than 34. So everything is lush because I have to water it once a day. I just bring the hose pipe in and I just drench the entire conservatory. Because it's all glass, it gets very, very warm. In the last 3 weeks, we've had Agatha here, and in 3 weeks, she sowed these tomato seeds from nothing, and all these lovely marigolds were sown 2 weeks ago. Nasturtiums were sown 2 weeks ago. So you can see what the heat has been doing. It has been absolutely very, very hot. I wouldn't say it is disadvantaged, but it does scorch some of my maples. But these tropical plants just love it. So if you remember the picture I showed of the ficuses I pruned 6 weeks ago, they were like skeletons, and look at them now. They are flush with leaves, completely covered in leaf. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you don't prune them hard, you will get floppy growth, and all the shape and balance of the tree will be lost. So this was a huge one that I pruned, and the leaves have come back again. This is another thick trunk one. This trunk here is at least 18 inches at the base. I don't know what variety of ficus this is. It's not the retusa. This is sold as retusa, but this one has got very tight leaves, and these branches are grafted on. So that is that tree, and that one was pruned hard. All these large ones on the ground were pruned hard. That's another tight leaf one. You can see the thickness of the trunks. I've got a mango tree growing here, for those of you who know your mango trees. That's a mango tree, and that's only like 2 months old. I'd like to show you some of the tropicals that I grow. This people tree, believe it or not, had no leaves 2 weeks ago because it suddenly lost all the old leaves, and these are the new leaves that have come in just 2 weeks. This particular tree has been grown from a cutting that one of my friends from India brought. He is a Jewish gentleman, but he is a practicing Hindu. But sadly, he passed away during pandemic. But he took a cutting about 30 or 40 years ago from a tree that apparently Lord Buddha sat under in Bodh Gaya. And he took a cutting and grew this as a bonsai. And he gave me a few cuttings about 25 years ago. I keep propagating from it. So these are all the baby plants from that original tree. And what I cut, I've put into soil there to produce cuttings. I hope I won't distract you with all this. I did another experiment. Now this ficus was pruned only 2 weeks ago. I felt it was too dense, so I pruned it a second time. And in 2 weeks, look at all this new growth that has come. So that is the tree. This also was pruned 6 weeks ago. And this was pruned on the 12th of May. And look at the growth now. So as I turn around, you will see the results of my handiwork. This was another tree we pruned hard, and that is the new growth. So what I'm trying to show, and the following shots of these ficus I prune, is that don't be afraid to prune. You've got to prune to keep them in good condition. Now let's move on to some other trees. So I'm going to show you all the ficuses that we did prune. You may have to look at that video that I produced 2 months ago, because I did the pruning of these on the 24th of April, and today is the 28th of June. Okay, so let's show you. All these extensions have grown in 1 or 2 months, and already it requires a second prune. I won't do this whole tree, but just to show you how green and how lush the growth is. So you see, again, the structure of the tree has been lost. So again, we've got to do it. So every 2 weeks, you've got to go around doing this. Those of you who are watching these videos from the tropics will probably appreciate what I'm telling them, because in their countries, they are used to this sort of thing. And again, it shows you that here in England, we can get this sort of growth. I know that we are going through a heat wave, because today the temperature is 34. But even in a normal summer, we get this sort of growth. For want of a better word, this is really like topiary. You can go into the structure in the winter, the first major prune, but I'm doing this mainly to show the trunk and to maintain the pad structure. Now don't say that just because Peter Chan is growing it in his greenhouse, he can get this growth. I have some customers who just grow their ficus on the kitchen windowsill, and they are exactly the same as this. So there is no excuse. If you keep it hydrated well, moisture, lots of water. In fact, if you just take a hose pipe, take it outside to the garden in the summer and drench it heavily. Don't just give it a tiny bit of water with a cup. You've got to really drench it, and that's how they need to be watered. I'm going to do a video on watering as well, because in this heat, many people don't appreciate the sort of watering that is required, or how to do it. So I know that this is more like a pom-pom. I can go into the structure, but the principle is really to create the structure, layers between the branches. So this one, if we look at this closely from here, you see the branches again merging, and the structure is lost. So I'm going to hardwood. You see, that would be a beautiful cutting. You've got to go down as hard as that. The harder you prune, the more growth you get. It almost seems a dichotomy or a contradiction, but you prune hard, you think you're removing everything, but no, it produces more. It's when you're afraid to prune that you don't get this lush growth. There's some beautiful cuttings. I'm going to save them. So you see I've created that pad. Now that pad is getting lost, so I'm going there again. So all these extensions are about 4 to 6 inches long. In about 5 or 6 weeks, and of course, because you're taking all this foliage off, you have to feed the tree. I tend to use the normal Naruko Japanese fertilizer. You can use liquid fertilizer as well, but in fact any fertilizer is needed. If you don't feed the tree, you see the logic, you're depriving it of food because it's produced all this leaf, you've got to feed it again. So this big one again, if you look at this one, this is a pretty big one. It's at least 4 foot across. This again was pruned hard 2 months ago, and again all that growth I have to prune once more. So I reckon in a year you need to do the ficuses about 3 times to keep it in good condition. some people who keep it permanently in an office where it doesn't get a lot of humidity and they're afraid to water heavily, you may not get this growth. I do warn you. In fact, I always recommend people who have these sort of trees in display situations like offices, they really need to have a rotation of trees. By rotation, I mean keep the tree in the office for about 2 or 3 weeks and then swap it for another one so that that one can be put in a greenhouse to rejuvenate. I know they will grow, but they won't grow well. They won't die, but they won't grow well. But to get this sort of lush, intensive growth, you have to give it good growing conditions. And if you're afraid to water, and if you don't have enough humidity, you're not providing these ficuses with what they really like, because in their natural conditions or their natural habitat, they grow in high temperatures, high humidity, and very bright sunlight. And it's only logical that if you don't provide those conditions, you won't get the optimum growth. And in this greenhouse, I'm happy to say that I'm almost producing the tropical conditions because I have the temperature, I have the light. But you can always adapt the situation and make do. Look at that dense pad, really dense. So again, for want of a better word, this is just topiary, like doing your hedge. No more than that. I think a lot of people make bonsai more sophisticated than it needs to be. For the ordinary amateur, unless you're putting the tree in a competition, this is sufficient. Grow your tree healthy, give it a nice appearance, and then don't worry about what some of these experts do. I know that they do a good job, but don't forget they're putting it into a competition. If you're not putting it into a competition, you don't need to do that sort of thing. I could spend hours looking at each twig and taking out each twig that I don't need to be in its place, but that's not the object of this exercise. And I do notice that there is some dieback. So even in the growing season, you will continue to get dieback because you have such a lot of dense foliage. Some of the twigs that don't get enough light will die back. So it's quite normal. So although this is a healthy tree, there are still some dead twigs. It's all part of nature. Even if you go into a ficus jungle or forest, you will find a situation exactly like this. So that one is done. I'm going to show you some other big ones that we have in this greenhouse. And we have a massive one in the other greenhouse too, which I will show you as well. So let's walk here and follow through some of the projects I did. Now this ficus I did rather late, and you see the structural effect. You can still see that the structure is maintained. You can see the pads and levels. Don't forget, this is a big tree. It's about 4 to 5 foot across. If I didn't stand near it, you wouldn't realize how big it is. So this tree was pruned hard only a month ago. And this is the new growth that has come in the last month. All this new shoots. So it was almost stripped bare because I can't see any old foliage. That is old foliage, but this is all new foliage. So this is the result of heavy pruning. And you see how it has come back. It's come back beautifully. Now this is another one, if you remember what I did. I really scabbed this very heavily. And this is the effect. You see the beautiful trunk structure? Before I did that, you could not see it. So it hasn't grown that much. This again was pruned only a month ago. This was pruned 2 months ago. So in the space of a month, you can see that they grow much more. So because this was done 2 months ago, it's time to prune again. Never ending, never ending. So again, it's lost its shape. I'm just repeating this just to reinforce the learning. So again, the basic shape is that dome shape. See, that's spoiling the dome shape. You can see. Well, when you think you ladies do your hair every day, so to do a ficus once every month is not too much to ask. And you've got to look at it from every side. I'm going to come to the ordinary run-of-the-mill trees that people buy for their homes. And I'll show you how to prune some of those. These large ones, unless you've got a very large living room, not everyone can handle these big trees. These mainly go to offices. So let me just show you how we're dealing with it. You can still see the outline that I created earlier. So I want to keep going back to the original outline. Or sometimes in the spring even harder, further back and create a new outline. Keeping the trunk bare and empty is quite important. So this tree has a front and a back. So I think that the preferred front is this side. So this is the preferred front. I could create pads if I wanted to. That means go into that. And don't just make it a topiary dome, but create pads. But again, you've got to have a healthy tree to do it. If your tree is not growing healthy and strong, you cannot cut hard back. So that's another one due to be cut. Let me just go and show you some of the what we call run-of-the-mill trees that you only folk buy. These are large trees still, but nevertheless, people do buy them. Again, this is all 1 month's growth, like so. So again, you've got to go around and prune it back. So I won't spend much more time. Suffice to say that you have to constantly keep at it. So again, you can see that the light colored leaves are the new ones, which sadly we're going to prune off. Prune it back to the shape. Oh, this is a little one. Even these little ones, you see how well they're growing. So these we feed as well. All need to be fed. So at the height of summer, this is how your ficuses should be growing. If they're not growing like this, you are not either giving it enough water or not feeding enough or keeping it in a very dark position. If you decide to keep your indoor plants outside in the summer, make sure you give them shade, because at the moment the sun is so intense they will burn the leaves. I've tried growing some ficuses in the full sun. They do grow well, but the leaves get burnt, they get brown. But that doesn't mean that they die, they just get brown. So on a large nursery you have armies of people going around just trimming the trees to keep them in good condition. Again, look at that. So again, you see this tree has lost its shape. So let me just show you what we do. So you see these long extensions spoil the pad. You can wire it out if you wanted to make it a longer branch, but if you didn't want to, You've got to prune it quite hard to create space between branches, maintain the shape. But the thing is not to be afraid. The more you prune, and provided the trees are fed well, you will continue to get new shoots and new branches. What a delightful sight that is. You see all that new growth? And then prune it back. So don't let the leaves merge and spoil the pad formation. I just spotted a ficus that I'm about to prune, and I have mentioned before, don't worry when you get the odd yellow leaf on the ficus. Many people are obsessed or excessively worried when they see the odd yellow leaf on a tree. With ficuses, even ficuses shed their leaves. I know they're essentially evergreen, but because they produce new leaves, the inside leaves will die off. So if you see yellowing leaves, don't worry, it's perfectly normal. So while I've got this tree, I'll show you, look at that. Show you the extension, look at that, that's every bit 6 inches long. And all in the space of, I would say this is about 6 weeks of growth. I know that this is in the greenhouse, in the living room, it may not grow so fast. There was a time we never used to sell indoor trees, or I was always dubious or uncomfortable selling people indoor trees because I know how difficult they are to maintain and to keep alive. But now that I've grown so many indoor varieties, I've come to the conclusion that if you do judicious pruning and judicious care, you will get good results. You follow the same basic principles, but you just modify it. So the protection in the winter, the type of pruning and the type of feeding is really not very different from the outdoor trees. Where people go wrong with outdoor trees is that they tend to keep it in too dark a position, or they don't give it enough water. I still maintain that 90% of all the failures in bonsai, and especially indoor bonsai, is when people are not very careful with their pruning. Not pruning, with watering. Watering is by far the most important thing. So look at that little tree, I've taken that much off. So, there you go. These will make beautiful cuttings. In the commercial bonsai world, a lot of these trees are mass produced in China. I dare say they must produce millions of these every year because the international market for bonsai is vast, is huge. And Sagaretia, or the bird plum cherry, is one of the very popular species. The Chinese elm is by far the most common, but the Sagaretia would come a second, close second. But I would warn you, Sagaretia is not as easy as the indoor elm. So in the summer they grow well, but in the winter they tend to struggle. Look at that shoot. That shoot, which is over 2 foot long, has been produced in the last 2 months or maybe 6 weeks. So they have to be pruned hard. So again, they've got these greenhouse conditions. So just generally going through that. You can structure it if you want, but the main thing is to keep it compact. Now, why do we keep it compact? Again, if I may just repeat we keep it compact, because if you let all the energies go to the extremities of these branches, there's no energy going to go into the inside of the tree, and if that happens, the tree will lose its leaves in the center. Now, these long branches, if you are so, inclined, you can wire them into a better shape, so they can be improved and wired. You don't have to just keep pruning them. So some of these long branches can be used to restructure the tree. I know that with indoor bonsai, you don't have so much chance or opportunity to do wiring and shaping, but you can as well. If you are determined and if you have the skills, you can do that. So many of these new young branches, you can take out and wire them to emphasize the triangular shape much more. Can you see how it improves it by taking it out that way rather than letting it go straight? So much for the Sagratia. They're extremely vigorous trees. Look at all of them. They've gone completely out of shape. So this is summer pruning of your indoor bonsai. Doesn't take long. Okay, let's look at some other varieties, because not all varieties grow in the same way. The pepper tree is another popular tree. I would just mention that the pepper trees are very prone to getting aphid attack, so you've got to watch the aphids on them. So this is pepper. These have just been pruned, but they don't grow at such a fast rate as the Chinese elm and the Sagratia. Now this is one that we have not pruned. Again, can you see the aphid on that? Can you magnify it 5 times, please? You see, this is aphid attack. So certain trees are prone to certain types of disease. So these aphids, you've got to just get a spray gun and spray it to get rid of it. You can use a strong jet of water, but if you're, uncomfortable using chemical, you can do that. But I still use chemical. You may criticize me, but that is the only effective way to control pests in a commercial nursery. So that's pruned back. So do be careful. Certain varieties attract certain pests and disease, and you've got to keep an eye on it. The ficus is relatively disease-free, although they do get what we call the woolly aphis, the little white woolly insects. I haven't seen any of our trees infected by them, but they seem to be all right at the moment. The jade trees are also fairly disease-prone. While I'm passing, these are pomegranates, and pomegranate is a Mediterranean tree. Some people grow them indoors, but they're better grown outdoors, but given protection in the winter. So look at these long shoots. The trouble with a lot of these flowering trees and fruiting trees, look at this one. This is a edible ficus. That's a outdoor tree, but not hardy. Now the pomegranates, if you prune too hard, you will remove the flowers. So some people prefer to let the extensions grow long, because if you keep pruning them, you don't get many flowers. Bougainvillea, this is a miniature type of bougainvillea, not the one that is grown up against walls you find in Spain and Portugal, but they do make nice bonsai. That's a beautiful flower. Okay. I'm now in our back greenhouse where we do all our workshops and styling of trees. This year, because of the dry weather, I couldn't plant the dahlias out, so I'm growing them in pots in my greenhouse. So these are the efforts that I can show you. I love my dahlias. It's a legacy from my tropical days. And I'm now going to walk towards a huge ficus. This is absolutely enormous ficus. This ficus is every bit 4 to 5 foot tall. You see, the panes of glass are 2 foot wide, so you can get some ideas to how big this ficus is. Again, this is one I pruned very, very hard, absolutely hard. And look at all the shoots that have grown. I changed the shape, I made it more of a pyramid shape, and I introduced space between the branches. Before that, it was just one complete blob, my favorite expression. That means just a round mass with no distinction or ramification. No layer of the branches could be seen. It was just complete round ball. So this is the effect you get when you prune ficuses hard. I think you should do it at least once, if not twice a year. If you live in the tropics, you would be doing it all year round. This is a follow-up of the great big Chinese quince that I showed not so long ago, and I pruned it hard back, and lo and behold, look at it. In just 3 weeks, I've got shoots which are 8 to 12 inches long. Many people question what I did. They said you shouldn't have done it, but look at that hard pruning. I've restored it, and I'm now going to create ramification. So as I've always pointed out to you YouTube followers, ramification is not rocket science. So with all these long shoots, if you didn't do anything, it'll get extended and become branches. So what I do is I keep it back to either 1 or 2 nodes, like that. 1 or 2 nodes. Now that one is growing inwards. I'll show you how long this branch is. That branch is as long as that. Every bit 14 inches long. And that is all in 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm just going through, I'm holding the camera in one hand and cutting with the other hand. So these are all going to be pruned back to 1 to 2 buds all over the tree to create ramification. When I've done it, I will show you again. So that one here, you can see I'm going to prune it back to 2 buds there. So I'm going to go all through this tree and show you what I'm doing. So just a little bit of pruning, and you can see the progress of this tree. And from all the hard wood, new shoots are beginning to appear, like there. So even from really old wood, you can get new shoots coming. So if you can imagine, if I keep doing this, every time a new shoot grows, I cut it back to 1 or 2 leaves, and then you'll get more and more ramification, and ramification further back into the tree. So this is that famous quince.